Welcome back to part 4 of the CFS Plus 2021 Main Stage program. If you want to explore the other areas of the platform while still keeping up with what's happening on the main stage, you can click on the Picture-in-Picture button on the bottom right corner below me. I'm honored to now welcome President and Chief Executive Officer of Ralph Lauren Corporation, Patrice Louvet, who will share with us a keynote on how to design a thriving fashion industry that takes action on sustainability. The word is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm excited to be here with all of you. I'd like to start by thanking Federica and the Global Fashion Agenda for putting this event together. And importantly, for all the work they've done and continue to do to encourage the global fashion industry to take bold action on sustainability. What a question they've put to us. How can we design a thriving fashion industry that creates prosperity for all people, communities, and the planet? It is the question, isn't it? Employees, customers, regulators, investors, and civil society, they're asking all of us in fashion versions of today's question. What are we doing for the planet? Where are you on gender pay equity? Where are your clothes made? And how are they made? Which means there's tremendous value in having authentic, compelling answers with goals and commitments that hold us accountable. Feel, as we all know, is a hugely important word in fashion. How a brand looks is one thing, but how it makes you feel, that's everything. One of my favorite quotes from Ralph that I think captures the essence of what we're talking about is, you don't just wear clothes. You live a life. You have a style. You project who you are. That's why it doesn't feel good to buy something, no matter how it looks or how much it costs, you know you're going to throw away. Or that you know will sit in a landfill. Or that wasn't made ethically. Because what does it say about us when we wear it? And that's why it does feel good to work for, to buy from, to invest in companies that respect people and the planet, that source and manufacture responsibly, that are genuinely diverse, equitable, and inclusive. So that's the opportunity for all of us in the fashion industry. We can create value for all stakeholders and a deeper connection with employees, a more compelling story for our customers, and a more resilient business overall when we integrate sustainability into everything we do. I'm proud of the progress we've made at Ralph Lauren, from launching our net zero roadmap and our circularity strategy to increasing our overall data transparency. Our commitment can be seen, for example, in our decision to connect executive compensation to our sustainability progress. But let's be clear, a huge amount still needs to evolve across our industry. Business models, supply chains, hiring practices, the way we collaborate, just to name a few. These aren't simple adjustments to make, even in the best of times. But it is vital that we find ways to make them together. Ralph has said, I'm interested in longevity, in timelessness, not fashion. I hope we can all embrace the spirit of Ralph's words as we work together to build a better future for all of our stakeholders, a future where our industry can thrive over the long term. Thank you.
It requires a consolidated action of industries, policymakers, and civil society. The industry needs support of policymakers by creating legal frameworks to foster these innovations, instead of over-regulating businesses. The civil society plays an essential role in educating people to drive the mindshift at the ultimate root of this challenge, which is the consumer's wallet.
We need to support greater use of renewable energy within the supply chain. This will be a bit of a challenge since many production countries are still building their energy infrastructure, but it's about time for us to take action.
Decoupling growth from constrained resources requires us to shift to a new model that is regenerative instead of the linear model that we've created now. We need to move away from a single issue focus, which is how we found ourselves in this problem today, towards a holistic focus on improving the planet and improving people and creating the society that we want.
We can find a way to balance the two and allow them to coexist and break that tension between short-term gains and long-term survival. We can build prosperity by leveraging new selling techniques and resale strategies and models. The tech and digital innovation is here, we just need to embrace it. The question I would ask here is, how can we align self-interest in the here and now with the actions that support the future and future generations?
It is my pleasure to have the next two esteemed speakers on the CFS Plus stage. Taking part in a one-on-one conversation on innovation versus legacy will be Jenna Johnson, head of Patagonia Inc., and Olivier Fournier, Executive Vice President, Corporate Development of Social Affairs of Hermès International. They'll discuss the ways in which companies can disrupt while staying true to their DNA and heritage.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, Olivier. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, and good morning to you.
Thank you. Good evening to you.
Yes, thank you. So maybe we can start our conversation. I have a first question for you, Jenna. The two concepts of innovation and legacy are not opposed at Hermès, since the starting point for the business was founded in passion, and I think it's same as you. For us, that was horses and harnesses. And for you, it was rock climbing and pitons. How does all this link to sustainability at Patagonia? And how do you realize your intention to make the highest quality product?
Yeah, you're correct. This is a really big part of the heart and the start of Patagonia. You know, Patagonia actually started back in 1965 when our founder, Yvon Chouinard, partnered with his friend Tom Frost and actually began a hard goods company called Chouinard Equipment. And they really adhered to this ethos that is so a part of us today of less is more. They had built the piton, as you mentioned, which is a piece of hardware that you hammer into the rock. And as Yvon was climbing on rocks, specifically in Yosemite, but certainly all around the world, he was noticing that this tool that they had built that was really the central part of their business was actually destroying the rocks that he loved so much and that were such a big part of his passion and his life. And so Yvon and Tom went back to their forge and they reimagined a new tool. And this is a big deal. At the time, they were the #1 leading hardware manufacturer of pitons and hardware in the United States. They were, this was the staple of their business. And so the fact that they went back to the forge and they found a way to build an aluminum chalk that could be placed and then removed from the rock was a really big part of how our company got started, and that ethos of sustainability. But it wasn't just about building the tool, it was also about explaining to the climbing community at the time the harm that pitons were doing to the rocks. And they wrote an essay in their catalog that they titled Clean Climbing, in which they really encouraged rock climbers to find a more responsible, a more sustainable way of climbing and moving forward, and getting them on board with moving into this new tool, the new chalk that could be replaced. And so this ethos has really been with us as we transition to Patagonia, an apparel and equipment manufacturer. We have continued to really embrace and hold deep responsibility for that ethos of less is more, and for deep responsibility. We have made some really big moves over the years. Organic cotton might be one of the best examples of this. We recognized that conventional cotton was causing a lot of problems out there. And so we decided to make the move to 100% organic cotton. And I bring this one up because I think it's a really good example of not only how committing to ethics in our business has been such a core part of what we've done, but how it has not always been easy. Same as the piton, trying to transition climbers from a tool that they knew and trusted to something else that was new but more responsible was tricky and took a lot of learnings. So was moving to organic cotton, because the farmers at the time who were growing organic cotton were very small. It was a very, very small field. And so it took a lot to try to help support and build from the ground up demand for a more ethical and more responsible way of doing business. And I think that this is really important, this combination of committing internally, but also helping bring people along. And so it makes me wonder, as I think about Hermes and like your founding story and how you came to be, which you mentioned a little bit, I'm curious how that informs your approach to innovation and how it has allowed you at Hermes to produce less, so to speak, kind of this ethos that we have so strong at Patagonia, doing more with less. How does that play out at your company?
I think it's important. It's an important point in any case. And I think, as you said, Jenna, we should not oppose innovation and legacy. At Hermes, our legacy is, of course, older than Patagonia, because the company started in 1837. Yeah. But we has always been a contemporary manufacturer. And innovation, I think, is a mindset. And really, we try to nurture and carrying out internally it since the beginning, since the beginning of our story. And in fact, the starting point at Hermes was a passion combined with a quest of excellence embodied through the gesture of the craftsman. And really, we apply our knowledge to craft high quality objects which evolve to accompany the evolution of society. And there's really the best example is the story of Émile Hermès, who was the grandson of the founder. And he visited the US in the 20s. And he discovered in the US that the car will replace the horse. And at that time, we were only harnesses and saddle maker. And in fact, we also were making equipment for the horse riding. And it was a complete change in our way of doing things. It was a disruption in our market. And when Émile Hermès came back in France, in Paris, he asked the craftsmen in the workshop, what can we do with our hands to satisfy our customers and to be useful to our clients? And in fact, they decided to move from saddles and harnesses to traveling cases, and then eventually fashion. And it was a complete change in our business. And in fact, also we started at that time to use materials for something they were not meant for. For example, we use technical textile, technical fabrics into bags. And it was a complete innovation at that time. And I think what can we say is that we can be proud of our heritage, but at the same time, we can change anything we want if it makes change. For example, in our textile activities, so all based in France, in the area of Lyon, in the southeast of France, we have invested in unique and exclusive technology to allow the quality of the prints of the silk with less use of water and chemicals. So innovation in this case was the best way to bring, some respect for nature. But I think we should not talk about innovation without talking about freedom of creation, because freedom of creation is at the core of our strategy, as we need a strong link and a dialogue between the creators and the makers to make sustainable objects. It's what we did with Apple computer, for example. Apple brought the technology for the Apple Watch, and we brought the knowledge of the craftsmanship for the leather straps. And it was a good meeting and a good way of bringing together craftsmanship and technology. And so it's what is important, I think, really, is to be authentic in what you do and to maintain this level of craftsmanship. For example, at Hermes was a choice. So it's what we have made for so many years, and it's why we have located all the production in France. 60% of our objects are produced internally, so we have a strong integration. Talking about the future of consumerism, Jenna, how is Patagonia rethinking the future of consumerism while staying true to its culture and its heritage? For example, I know your worn-wear program. For example, it still feels very innovative to me. Can you speak on this, please?
Yeah, happy to. I love hearing your founding story and the work that you're doing, and I love this word craftsmanship. I feel that it is so important that we keep craft alive in the work that we're doing. And at Patagonia, I spoke to kind of the evolution from the piton to the chalk, from conventional cotton to organic cotton. We've had a lot of these moves along the way, and we as an organization continue to learn and push ourselves forward to be to provide better and more responsible and more products with less impact as possible. So we're learning, right? We're on this journey, and we're continuing to keep craft at the heart of what we're doing. And yet what we know is that the single best thing that you can do to lower your environmental footprint is to consume less. So for all of us, consuming less, buying less means multiple things, right? One, it means if you put pressure on the companies that you're purchasing from to buy less from them. And the manufacturing industry, there is no doubt, is one of the heaviest of the polluters and the most impactful to in this climate crisis that we're in. And so if we can get companies to make less, what that means ultimately is the onus becomes on buying higher quality and companies committing to quality and durability at the heart of what they do. And this is, Olivier, this is what you and I do all day long, right? Is think about quality and durability. This is how we build trust. This is how we build loyalty with those who do come to us and purchase something. I hope that when somebody buys something from Patagonia, whether it's a fleece jacket or a shell to go skiing in, that they think of that product almost like an heirloom, something that they want to hold on to for as long as possible. And when they are ready to buy something new, that they'll pass it down to someone that they know and care about who might need that product now. And so that is how we kind of came to worn-wear and the work that we're doing on worn-wear. Worn-wear is essentially a hub for us for keeping product in play. As we think about building long-lasting, durable products for our community, we want our community to have a way to easily be able to keep those products in play. Again, when they're done with them and ready to move on to something else for whatever reason that is, that they almost like gift that to their community through our worn-wear hub. And so we continue to evolve what that looks like. It's only one piece of the puzzle. But end of life has been a really important learning for us at the moment. You know, there are, we have been very committed to the inputs and the way in which we create product and what we're putting into the system, how we're making it, how we're treating the workers within our supply chain. All that has been a massive body of work, and I feel very proud of the progress that we've made. Now it really comes to that middle section. How do people take care of their gear once they own it? And then what do they do at the end of its life? How do we keep product in play for as long as possible through a worn-wear program at Patagonia? How can we melt down materials and rebuild them so that we're not actually using new resources in order to manufacture new products? This has all become a really critical part of Patagonia's business model, but what I see as a necessity of the future if we are going to reduce our environmental footprint. So thanks for asking. This is a really big part of what we're doing, and certainly stems all the way from back in the days of just being aware of how pitons were affecting the rock that we were climbing on and the world that we loved, and wanting to protect it. That value, that ethos continues to live with us as we think about true circularity and how we can take responsibility and help others take full responsibility for all their products. And so my last question for you, Olivier, is really around the same kind of idea: durability, quality, craft. What specifically does that mean to you? These are such important elements. You and I have both spoken about them, but I'm curious how they link to you reducing your impact on natural resources.
Thank you, Jenna, and thank you for your answer. And I love the way you describe your impact and the fact that durability for you means something. And I think for us, it's also almost the same. So durability means quality without compromise. And high quality means durability at each stage of an integrated value chain, from the object to the people you employed, to the partnerships with your suppliers, and to the use of natural resources. And everything is linked. If we start with the object itself, I think the functional aesthetics is very important. It's what you described with your object. And I think it's the same with us. And we try to go beyond fashion trends to consider objects that are useful and that can be repaired. Very important. Circularity is also important, opposing repairability to destruction. Recycling and upcycling of materials. You know, we have created a few years a new métier called petit tâche. And petit tâche is a way to reuse objects with defects and material that we have left over. And we combine the objects and the material with the help of creators and craftsmen. And if you come to Paris, you should visit our workshop specific to petit tâche in the suburb of Paris. It's fantastic to see the craftsmen and the designers working together to create incredible objects. It's petit tâche. And to upcycle, you know, things we left behind us. Investing in research and development is also very important. For example, to develop new materials based on biotechnologies. But durability, it's not only for objects, it's also for people, for the employment. And for us, it implies to be a responsible employer. You know, maybe like a Japanese company, we commit to offer a work for life to our employees with a lot of sense and accomplishment. And to be a long-term partner also for communities and regions where we operate. We employ 17,000 people worldwide in 45 countries. We have 51 production sites located in 9 regions of France, and more than 1/3 of the employees are artisans. So, you know, it's a large responsibility. And for example, during the peak of the COVID pandemic, we decided during the strict lockdowns in many countries to maintain the salaries of our employees without using subsidies from local governments. And we also believe that training and education are to be at the core of our priorities. So we train our craftsmen for a long time. It's 18 months for the leather goods. It's 3 years for the printing of silk. So, you know, it's always a large investment and very important investment. And we do it also with the foundation. The MS Foundation, we have a large program in education. And we think that education is important, as the durability of partnerships with our suppliers also. And we work with our suppliers for so many years. With the top 50 largest direct suppliers, we have an average of 20 years of relationships. And of course, we have the same approach with the use of natural resources. But I think when we talk about natural resources, what we have to do is to have a scientific approach. And you know, we ran recently a very interesting study with the University of Cambridge about silk. I don't know if you know this body inside of the University of Cambridge called the Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Yeah. And we have done with them a study, and we know that for silk, local biodiversity in Brazil, where we buy our silk, it's in the southwest part of Brazil. So the local biodiversity in Brazil benefits from carbon sequestration through mulberry trees, for soil regeneration, and reduction of agrochemicals. So, you know, it's a combination of things, but based on scientific approach. We work also with WWF because we think it's important to calculate and to try to have a biodiversity score. So all these elements combined are important for the durability of the object. So Jenna, it's, I think, the end of our conversation. We can continue for a long time, but it was really a pleasure to have the discussion with you. And I can tell you, we respect so much the Patagonia approach towards those subjects of sustainability. And I feel at the end that we share values and commitments to maintain a responsible and sustainable way of doing things with passion and authenticity. So thank you, Jenna.
Thank you so much. The respect is absolutely mutual. Thank you for all the work that you're doing at Hermes. And I look forward to talking with you again soon, hopefully.
Yes, and I hope to see you in Paris.
Yes, hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Gina.
Bye-bye.
For me, prosperity and growth are linked, but we are starting to see business models slowly change. More businesses are instilling ESG principles at the heart of their companies, measuring and reducing their negative impact on environment and society. And I think by applying these principles, they'll be much more likely to prosper over the long term.
It's interesting when you see some of the big leaders in the world, the Warren Buffetts and the Gates, etc., starting to think, well, actually, we made too much money from growth. Perhaps we should give some back. So perhaps it's a combination of recalibrating what we think it is to be prosperous, and also recalibrating, do we really need growth always to be the driver of prosperity? Can there be more meaningful ownership rather than growth?
To me, prosperity is about making the pie bigger. Growth is the ignition that creates prosperity. Going from 0 to 1 is growth. Prosperity is about finding a way to give everyone the opportunity to reach one.
What we're seeing through various trends is that growth for profit alone will fade over time as consumers are, one, demanding more products and services that are more personally meaningful, but two, also that they are socially and environmentally beneficial. And I think that we can see this very tangibly through the rise of re-commerce, which is dubbed to be growing 21 times faster than traditional retail. And ultimately, growth for profit alone at the detriment of people and planet will not be justifiable in the near future.
Prosperity for all is impossible unless the fashion industry understands that we need quality over quantity. Quality meaning the service they provide to the people. Quantity of production is the past and should be stopped.
Our next panel on equity versus equality will present a higher level conversation between 3 female leaders on the intersection of sustainability and justice. The conversation will provide education and real-life examples from the speakers on how they work to address and approach opportunities within this intersection.
Between sustainability and justice, highlighting how leading companies address this within their business strategies. We are thrilled to bring together at CFS Plus two extraordinary leaders to offer you their perspectives on how they approach opportunities related to the intersection on sustainability and justice throughout their business and day-to-day activities. I will facilitate the discussion to make sure we will not only focus explicitly on the fashion industry, rather, it will be a higher level conversation which can potentially provide real life examples from leading companies on how they work to address this intersectionality. Join me here today for this important conversation are two remarkable women with unique insight into the topics at hand. Welcome, Dr. Ayana, and welcome, Felicia.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Really happy to be here.
As Nike's Chief Talent, Diversity, and Culture Officer, Felicia Mayo will speak to the connection between equity and equality and the way that Nike lives its purpose throughout its business. Felicia Mayo is joined by Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, who helped educate numbers of the audience on the inherent connection between social and environmental justice and how this work is not a versus, but a connection. Before diving into the conversation, let me briefly tell you about their work. Dr. Ayana is a marine biologist, policy expert, writer, and Brooklyn native. She's founder of the nonprofit think tank Urban Ocean Lab, co-founder of the climate initiative, the All We Can Save project, and co-creator of the podcast, How to Save a Planet. Well, when All We Can Save book was published in September 2020, it became an instant bestseller. I was particularly struck by the impressive collection of essay, poetry, and art featuring more than 40 women in the climate movement, and by your goal with the anthology to open up space for a more generous and mainstream dialogue that involves every possible voice. Felicia Mayo joined Nike in 2019 from Tesla with a long career before that in HR, talent acquisition, and diversity management at various global companies such as Oracle and Juniper Network. In her current role as Chief Talent, Diversity, and Culture Officer, Felicia focuses on diversity and inclusion within talent development and culture, two key areas of acceleration in Nike's commitment to diversity, culture, and inclusion. So I cannot wait to get this conversation started. Felicia, let's start with you. Nike has been very vocal and outspoken about racial injustice over the years. Please tell us more about how you're creating systemic solutions that address inequality inside and outside the company.
Yes, so thank you for that question. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to everyone here and to be on this panel with the lovely Dr. Ayana, as well as speaking with you, Frederica. So To your question, as we speak about today, the balance of equity and equality, you'll see a bit of passion that will come from me, and I'm sure you'll see the same level, if not more, from Dr. Ayana, as we talk about our areas of expertise. And like just answering your question, I believe that systemic change requires systemic solutions. Like, again, systemic change requires systemic solutions. Like, we must look at the systemic solutions in order to drive us. And that is really something that I have focused in on throughout my career, and especially in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. At Nike, as many of you are aware, we are a very purpose-driven company, and we believe in the power of sport to move the world forward. And power of sport is at the center of absolutely everything that we do, everything. And so when you layer on top of that diversity, equity, and inclusion and sustainability, it's nirvana for me. It is that place in which I get to innovate. And Nike and our purpose leaders, we get to innovate, and it becomes very magical for us, and magic that impacts the planet. So let's talk a bit about what does purpose mean here at Nike? And for us, it means that we have a focus on people, planet, and play. It's real simple, but not so simple. It's people, planet, and play. And as you just highlighted, Frederica, just my experience, it has been with people. In human resources, in working in tech companies, working in digital, now working here at Nike in the consumer goods and apparel and footwear. It's amazing when all of my experience has now come into a culmination of being able to look at how do we drive the planet forward through sport. And so that means, with my career, investing in people has been my passion. People, that's where Nike, we're investing in the power of people to move the world forward. You talk about play. We're helping kids realize their potential through play and sport. How amazing. I get to do that with, I've always done that with my kids, even before as a child myself, and now to be able to really look at how does play come to life and for our kids, and how do we move that forward in sport. And then the third area, which is planet, which is our major focus for today. We're innovating here at Nike to protect the planet. Like, those are three lofty areas that we are focused in on, and we are so laser focused in on it. It's about everything that we do every day. It is those three pillars that we're always at the top or the front of our minds. But above all, we know that leading with purpose, it means striving for better. It's progression over perfection is what I always say, and it's kind of my daily mantra. It's progression over perfection. Knowing that we're always moving forward, we're striving for better every day, every launch that we have, from a footwear perspective to an apparel perspective, right? It's from the impact that we are able to have through our consumer goods that we create in the world. And we know we do that most through building diverse, equitable, and inclusive teams, and having that company that really embraces DEI. So let me transition a bit and tell you a bit about some of those systemic solutions that we are doing internally that may give you a little bit more of insight. So here at Nike, our aspiration is that we become a proof point to the industry for diversity, equity, and inclusion globally as we accelerate innovation through all of our apparel and our footwear. Now, noting that is not a small deal. I take the weight of that every day and know that it is not where one person can solve it. If it were the case, it would be solved by now. It takes all of us. And so as we're looking at that as an organization, as a company, internally, we know we are building a creative and inclusive culture where all voices are welcome. Internally, I am always talking to employees My team is always pulsing the employees to see how things are going, what is happening in the organization, to ensure that our employees know that their voices are very important because they help to actually add to those solutions. We can't create solutions without the voices that are internal. As we sit back and we look at, and as a great proof point, this past year, where after the racial reckoning, we heard directly from our employees, specifically our Black employees globally, and how we can continue to advance equity and inclusion in our company. We weren't starting from the beginning, so that was a great point for us, but we knew we had to progress forward. And so we continue to work directly with our employees to ensure that we created that inclusive environment that is so needed from a systemic perspective, dealing with some of the, gnarly concerns and issues that most companies may walk away from or may just highlight. We went really deep with our employees. And final proof point, how do we show up in not only internally, but also in the industry? Because it's very important. We know that actions that we actually take internally, they quickly go external because our employees are connected to our consumer base, and that's how we like it. It's very important for us. And so we know that all of the work that we do here, such as great proof point, Serena Design Crew. We have our Serena Williams design crew that works together. We brought together diverse designers because we knew diversity, we needed to increase in the designer industry. How we did that, we had most of our designers come and work for us. And we've sourced for designers in cities that we normally would not have sourced for designers. We made sure that through our athlete, Serena Williams, this was a desire that she wanted and that we wanted. How lovely is that to have a partnership and collaboration? So we were able to push forward and move forward with not only adding diverse designers to Nike, but also diverse designers in the industry, in the pipeline. And we are continuing that every year and working on diversity in design. And we just dropped our first line not long ago, which is awesome because I've seen it from beginning to now dropping lines for Serena Williams, one of our premier athletes. And we continue to work directly with sport and our athletes overall. Looking at the systemic solutions, I could talk all day about this, Frederica, but I know we don't have enough time. However, I just want to say that we know as a company such as Nike with our brand, we have a responsibility. We don't take that responsibility lightly at all. We recognize connecting to our consumer base is very important, and connecting to our workforce is very important. 1 and 2 may be the same, but not the same, because we have nuances that we have to make sure we're balancing to ensure that we are looking at systemic solutions at all times. My last point for you is through our Black community commitment and social and community impact work that we've done. That is, again, external, where we specifically focused in on partnering with organizations to help give voice to historically underserved communities around the world. Ultimately, we can't power sport without addressing the 3 pillars of purpose: people, planet, and play. And we have to address all the issues that intersect with our employees and our consumer base, as I highlighted. We know that making progress overall starts with changing hearts and minds. And I know that is a huge, huge thing to just sit and think about. How do you change hearts and minds? Well, you show your experiences, you share your experiences, and you have those discussions and you listen to the voices that are there. And you actually partner together to see how we can all work together in this space of purpose, of diversity, and ultimately, of course, sustainability, as we'll be talking about today. And so that is part of what we're doing as purpose leaders here at Nike. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Dr. Ayana, Felisa raised so many great points about how Nike is addressing 3 purpose pillars, particularly by addressing inequalities. As a climate expert, can you tell us more about Urban Ocean Lab and other ways you rally communities around equitable solution in the climate sector?
Sure. And I think to sort of build on what Felicia was saying, it's so interesting to hear her remark on the critical importance of listening to employees as they were responding to this second wave of Black Lives Matter activism and engagement, to really understand, you know, what's the breadth of perspectives, because it's the same thing that we need when we think about sustainability, right? We need people in every department. We need people at all levels of every corporation, every nonprofit, every government to be thinking through creatively solutions, collaboration. How do we adapt to the climate crisis in a way that actually make sure that everyone is okay in the future? Because if we don't have diversity in the context of climate decision making, then we will end up having a lot of people left behind, having communities that are not cared for in what we term a just transition. So how does social justice and addressing the climate crisis go together? And that is like, well, who's making the decision? So there's a lot of parallels there. And certainly within Nike, there's a huge opportunity for employees to be innovative within the company, within product, within marketing, within how we tell the story. Because, you know, one of the things that Felicia is overseeing is culture. And so when we think about fashion, when we think about climate, when we think about sustainability, when we think about justice, all of these are like very foundationally cultural issues. And so that's why I was excited to join you here today, because I think it's important to go to these epicenters of culture creation, fashion, and sustainable fashion, thankfully becoming a bigger and bigger part of that conversation. And so when I think about, in my experience, ways that all of these threads have come together, there's 2 examples that come to mind. So one, you mentioned very graciously in introducing me, the climate anthology, All We Can Save, that I co-edited, that came out last year. And the reason that that is an anthology and not a book that I wrote myself, but one that I co-edited, is because there are so many important voices we need to listen to. There are so many different perspectives to include when we think about how do we transform basically everything, right? If we have to change our electricity and our transportation and our manufacturing and our agriculture and our land use and our buildings, that's going to take people in every sector. It's going to take a cultural shift. It's going to take a political transformation, economic adaptation in major ways. And so a lot of my work is focused on making sure that we are listening to the diversity of voices that we need in order to come up with solutions that are actually going to work, right? It's not that diversity is a nice to have, it's that it's absolutely critical. And so that's why my first book that I co-edited with Catherine Wilkinson was an anthology. And it's been, I think, in part well received because people can see themselves in that work, right? Whether you are, you know, not everyone is a scientist, and not everyone wants to be like an activist and marching. People want to like bring their skills to this work. So whether you're a lawyer or a teacher or a journalist or a designer, there is a role for you to play. And we have all of that represented in that collection, including fashion. There is a model who writes an essay that is a letter to fossil fuel executives, saying, it's Cameron Russell writing about the parallel that she sees between the fashion industry and the fossil fuel industry being extractive and exploitative historically, and like what transformation would actually look like. So it's really, really exciting to get to be a part of that. And then the other nonprofit that I co-founded is Urban Ocean Lab, as you mentioned. And we have this coalition that we're co-leading and building around ocean justice. So where does ocean conservation mash up against the imperative for achieving social justice? Because we rarely think about those 2 things together, especially in federal ocean climate policy in the US. And so our approach there is to build a coalition to say, let's gather some of the largest ocean conservation groups who have expressed a desire to do their work in a way that is grounded in social justice, but they're maybe not quite sure what exactly that means. It's like good intentions, but like not a lot of detail, and they don't want to get it wrong. I think a lot of us feel that way, right? Whether it comes to sustainability or justice issues, we like, it's kind of can be really scary to go out on a limb and maybe get called out. So we're bringing these large NGOs together and then a bunch of the smaller justice-focused ocean conservation groups to really lead the conversation and say like, well, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing in coastal communities. These are the actual needs and priorities. How can we all then come together around a shared policy agenda at the national level and push that together in a unified way? And so that's the work that is starting right now, which has been really exciting to help lead.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Felicia, sometimes these topics can be complex and it's difficult for people to relate or see themselves in these issues. Can you share more about how these issues show up in your life, both professionally and personally?
Thank you for that question. And I think it shows up for all of us, in some way, right? And so for me personally, these issues show up probably since seeing, just the very weather patterns overall. I grew up in it wasn't a predominant neighborhood where it was more diverse and we had pollution. So I grew up with some of the impacts there. I think about my kids. They're both athletes, and my daughter plays soccer at a university, and she's been an athlete her entire life. And so I think about, as a parent, the extreme heat she sometimes plays in, and the weather qualities, and looking at also her gear. So I'm very conscious about all of the impact and to the planet that we can have, and just ultimately looking at how people, planet, and play is connected into absolutely everything we do. And it is something that's at the top of my mind, and probably even more so for my children. They are pushing it. So when you hear Dr. Ayana talk about the culture, it is very important that we, our kids, if the younger generation, they have, the culture is there. And they are definitely focusing in on people, planet, play. They're focusing in on it with their dollar as well, if you were to connect it to funds. So we have to be very conscious of how we are creating products in the future. And now we have always been focused in on how we're creating our products. As you highlighted, Frederica started in the product part of our company, which was great because I got to see the great work we've done through a great example of Space Hippie, and Dr. Ayana had a great conversation about our Space Hippie and how they're so cool. And they are by far our lowest carbon footprint shoe, which we make by basically transforming our own scrap into heat. And that means high heat that's on, your feet. You're a sneakerhead, you know where high heat is. And so it's just amazing to see like how my professional and my personal life has intersected in this space. And I think that as a company, we continue to push the intersection of this work, people, planet, play, and just the overall work through some of our work externally with organizations like Solstice, where we're empowering low income and Black, Indigenous people of color communities towards a just and inclusive clean energy transition, where we really believe there is a true intersection on this body of work. So we look to continue to push this work forward professionally and personally, and definitely with my passion, it's progression over perfection every day.
Well, thank you. We have not much time left, although we will continue this conversation for hours. Very interesting and very inspiring. Thank you very much, both of you, for your work. Dr. Ayana, like Nike, you are driving culture and conversation around the intersection of climate and justice, throughout your spoken and written work. One of the things that you talk about is the debate between individual action versus systemic change, which I like. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Sure. First, I guess I should say it's kind of funny to hear you say, like Nike, you're driving culture and conversation, because it's like such a different scale, right? Which is why I've been excited to collaborate with Nike on, for example, the Talking Trash series, in conversation with some of their, collaborators like Billie Eilish and snowboard champion Chloe Kim, to talk about these issues, and have Nike, which actually is changing culture on a global scale, use their platform to talk about these things. So I think that is really powerful. To the extent that I can contribute to that, it's a really exciting opportunity for me, specifically because we can help people connect the dots between what they do as individuals and how they can participate in systems level change, right? How we can stop obsessing only about what we do within our own lives and in our own homes. And of course, being low waste and low carbon is super important, but thinking about how we can start to shift our communities, our cities, our towns, our states, our countries, our industries, our sectors, and what specifically we can each contribute to these changes that need to be made, whether it's advocating for more and better bike lanes, which like Europe is way ahead of the US on, right? Like we have a lot to learn from what you all are doing on that. And, what are we doing about composting? And like, how are we transforming our electricity grid? And so to the extent that we can help provide people with ways to participate in these systems level changes as individuals, I think that that is the sweet spot.
Well, I like to repeat that, like Nike, you're driving culture. You say it on your book, right? You gave voices to others. So we thank you also for your voice.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's talk a bit about the necessity of diversity for devising sustainability and solutions. Of course, we are aware that this is a journey Nike is currently on, and therefore may be difficult to have all the answer and to be 100% perfect. We've been hearing also a philosophy that I share, that it's progress over perfection. So maybe that kind of approach can be applied here. As we're coming towards the end of the conversation, I would like to ask both of you the same question. It seems like building a truly diverse workforce, diverse in gender, race, and ability, naturally breeds innovation and the kind of innovative thinking that can dream up the next space heat issue or way to lower our supply chain's carbon footprint, or a community-based sustainability program. How do you see the connection between furthering diversity and inclusion and create sustainable solutions? Felicia?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take that one. And, I'll be quick with it. I think is what you're seeing right now. It's in action. And continuously having these discussions and showing the intersection is key. And, I think just having partnerships with like Dr. Ayana and Nike has been amazing. And we just should continue these conversations. Dr. Ayana, I'd love to get you in on this one.
Sure. I mean, I think it's so important for people to understand that this is not a nice to have when we talk about diversity and sustainability. These are intertwined, and quantitatively, we know that in the US, for example, if we have, it's about 49% of white Americans who are concerned about climate compared to 57% of Black Americans and 70% of Latinx Americans. So people of color are actually more concerned. And it's the same with women. When we have more women with seats in parliament, we actually get better environmental laws. We get stronger climate policy. So quantitatively, we know that diversity matters because women, people of color, people from different backgrounds are seeing the problems differently and seeing solutions solutions differently. And so that diversity is critical to coming up with ways to elegantly transform society from one based on fossil fuels to something that is more regenerative.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ayana and Felicia, for being with us at CFS Plus. It's time to wrap up, but tackling this complex, demanding issues of improving diversity, equality, and sustainability seems really like a massive task. So thank you again. I'm sure that the audience enjoy your perspective, and we hope that there will be more examples of intersectionality between sustainability and justice. So thank you, and back to you, Emilia.
Now it's time for a bit more focus on policy, which is such an integral aspect of achieving significant progress when it comes to sustainability in our industry and beyond. Let me introduce you to the European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius. He will enlighten us on the EU strategy for sustainable textiles.
Ladies and gentlemen, the textile sector is hugely important. It employs 1.5 million people across the EU in more than 160,000 companies. Most are SMEs. And in 2019, the turnover was 162 billion euros. That size gives you a special responsibility. The public is watching closely. They are concerned about working conditions and fair pay and safety, and they are increasingly aware of the impact. The sector uses immense amounts of water and primary raw materials, and there are major effects on the climate and on our environment. When we look at the current trends, the volumes of textile products placed on the market continues to increase. And these products are used for an even shorter period before being thrown away. Every second of every day, a truckload of textiles is landfilled or goes up in smoke. So a concern for sustainability has never been more important. COVID complicates everything. For textiles, it meant a drop in production and disrupted supplies. But that makes a drive for sustainability even more important. As a sector, it's in your interest to become more resilient and more resistant to global shocks. This is the thinking behind the European Green Deal. The EU drive for a different form of growth, more sustainable, carbon neutral, kinder to nature, and built around the circular economy. It's our path to a greener future, our path to sustainable recovery after the pandemic. For textiles, it means a long-term vision, which kickstarts a systemic transformation, a new approach with design for longer product lifetimes, products that are easier to repair and recycle, and a bigger market for recycled materials. In the spirit of the European Green Deal, we are working on a new EU strategy for sustainable textiles. Our goal is to offer a coherent framework laying the ground for the changes ahead. It's a path we want to take together with you, a path to a sector that's more sustainable, circular, and resilient. We will get there through a process of co-creation with many different stakeholders on board. The circular transformation will touch the whole of society, and I'm sure textiles will play a major role in the process. Thank you for putting sustainability at the center of your summit. It's a very heartening to see such a wide representation from all across the sector, and I wish you every success. Thank you.
The first thing to say is that it can't and it won't reinvent the current growth logic on its own. It's fundamental to take a broader systemic and holistic view of the challenges, clearly understanding the different roles that each actor plays. We need the whole supply chain to be engaged. It needs customers to be offered the opportunity to make different informed choices. It requires governments and legislators to create smart regulatory frameworks.
I think we have a responsibility as a brand to, one, not always glorify newness, but secondly, actually offer tangible products and services to our community that promote a more circular economy and move away from the traditional linear model.
Big businesses have got bigger responsibilities. Our planet and our marginalized people have got to be the common denominator for us to act upon. Of course, without international trade, the marginalized people of the South won't have any jobs. But we also know that their carbon footprint is the least. So capitalism does actually need a reboot.
I mean, we've set ourselves up to be unsustainable in so many ways. Perhaps it's time to rethink the seasonal logic of how the industry works. Perhaps if collections were more meaningfully presented less often, that they were more of an investment rather than a buy and throw away.
I think the fashion industry is in a really interesting place to help the world rethink this growth logic, to help reinvent it. There are businesses out there, and a number of them that have been there for a while now, that are appealing to investors and appealing to consumers, that are completely built around resale. That means that they're making a profit without making anything.
I am incredibly excited for the next element of the program, this year's Designer Challenge. Grammy winner and creative director of F1C, Miguel, has accepted the challenge to create a product within the context of designing sustainably. The process will be depicted while highlighting the difficulties in finding responsible solutions for lenses and frames and how to produce sunglasses as sustainably as possible. Right after this designer challenge, Miguel will be live in a case study about his experience with the challenge.
Why do I care about sustainability? I want my kids to be able to enjoy this. My name is Miguel, and this is my CFS Designer Challenge. Making music is, at this point now, of a second nature thing. It comes very naturally. My views on fashion are pretty much that it's just another form of expression. It's its own language. That's probably why I've always loved fashion and been a fan. I wanted to find clothes that helped me express myself, but that were made sustainably and ethically, and I just couldn't find them. So I saw a large gap there, and I just know that there's like millions of people who are looking for the same thing. I just felt like I could be of service. I could, add value there. I could educate people about, why sustainable fashion is important in the process of learning. One of my favorite things about fashion is how collaborative it is. It really is a great product, a great offering is very much like the sum of all its parts. The ability of all of the craftsmen that are involved, the design, the execution, all of this comes together and really creates a product that stands out and does what it's supposed to do. To be a part of this challenge, it's actually a tremendous honor. Sunglasses are probably one of my favorite items. I think it doesn't really get any more clear-cut and dry than eyewear. It's obvious what you wear sunglasses for, to protect your eyes. So the function is there. I think what makes a great pair of sunglasses is one that says something about who you are. So Sunshine has a design company that services other brands, other designers, in order to create eyewear that speaks to their brand, to their customer.
I am Taylor, and I am the sustainability expert within Sunshine Birch and Studio. We want to make changes. We know that eyewear is made of plastic, so we know that it's bad for the environment, but no one is putting time, money, or energy into finding solutions for it. Learning about the different ways
that manufacturing sunglasses contributes to plastic waste has been fun because it's given us an opportunity to look at how we can do it better, who's offering solutions in order to do it better, and then how can we best implement these solutions and which work the best in terms of impact and in terms of delivering the function and the form that we're looking for.
We need an option where everyone can have these lenses and not just rich people.
You know, when we put sustainable on the box, you know, and that it is absolutely sustainable top to bottom. And I think it's important, not just to me, but to our customers. If we don't make the decisions now to change our habits and the way that we consume and the way that we produce, then it puts all of that in jeopardy. So it's just time well spent and an opportunity to put my energy to something that not only is valuable to me, but is valuable and here in this time, but valuable for generations to come.
It is now time for us to gain more insights into this year's Designer Challenge. The next case study unlocks the vision with the Designer Challenge, together with in-depth knowledge around the eyewear industry and why the industry needs more investment in sustainability efforts.
Hi, everyone, and thank you to everyone who's viewing this session. It will be recorded and uploaded in the replay area afterwards, which can be found in the Hub and menu on the left-hand side. Throughout the session, you can ask questions, and we will address them in the end in the Q&A. I'm very excited to kick off this case study on the Designer Challenge with Miguel. My name is Oliver, and I'm the Innovation Forum Coordinator at Global Fashion Agenda. And just before this session, we broadcasted the CFS Plus Designer Challenge with Miguel, whose challenge was to produce a pair of responsible sunglasses. With me today, I have Miguel and two awesome women. So first and foremost, Miguel, a musician and creative director of his own brand S1C, and the one who said yes to identify a challenge together with us at GFA to create a product within the context of designing sustainably. And then we have Sunshine Bertrand, creative director and founder of her namesake design studio, Sunshine Bertrand, and also the solution provider in this Designer Challenge. And last but not least, we have Taylor Harding, who is the sustainability and studio manager at Sunshine Bertrand, and is working together with Sunshine and the sustainability expert within the company. So welcome to you guys. It's a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So just diving into the conversation, together with us at GFA, Sunshine, and the retailer LNCC, the project aim was for Miguel to develop and create a pair of sunglasses that should be available for purchase. We have just watched the Designer Challenge video highlighting the difficulties in finding responsible solutions for lenses and frames and how to make the sunglasses as sustainable as possible. Unfortunately, it was almost impossible to produce the sunglasses in the most responsible way due to an incredibly high cost of certification that is needed to use the most responsible material. The result of the Designer Challenge was therefore a call to action and not sunglasses that are available to purchase. So let me start out with you, Miguel. Why did you say yes to this challenge, taking a leap from being a musician to creating S1C as well?
Man, it was such a pleasure to first and foremost discover that there was an entire organization built around sustainability and finding, again, all of the missing links to get us to the next level or get this industry to the next level. As my interest in fashion has always been a part of my creative process, and being in a place now where
I've really decided to jump in and sort of find new ways to maybe meet a new consumer demand, and more importantly, hopefully help people who care about, you know, the things that they put their energy and their well-earned money, where they put that towards, you know, people who care about, you know, how those things are produced. I just felt like there's you know, a lot of space for new voices. And so just as a creative individual, it just felt like an automatic yes, you know, to jump in and you know, as an opportunity to learn and work with incredibly talented and knowledgeable people. So the choice to do sunglasses was all about just loving sunglasses and always loving sunglasses and going, well, where are the sustainable sunglasses? Because we're hearing so much about sustainable clothing now. I was curious as to how that affected the accessories. So yeah, here we are.
Amazing. And you diving into this new designer role, what do you so far have, what have you learned from entering this new designer field, and why do you particularly find sustainability interesting and valuable?
Ooh, lots, there's a lot. I think there's a tremendous amount. I believe, as in any craft-based service or product, I think it's always the sum is greater than its parts or less than. Yeah. So this industry I'm learning is so nuanced because it is such a relationship-based and a relationship-based industry. And so sort of getting to those, to the, you know, to those people, to the most knowledgeable people, the most knowledgeable craftsmen is probably the larger part. And then that's also sort of where I found the process becomes, there's a large amount of opportunity to evolve, because that's sort of also where crafting and, you know, the sort of time-proven, time-tested processes that need to sort of outgrow the, it's maybe sometimes wasteful and non-conscious or non-ethical ways of producing. There's a lot of opportunity there to sort of evolve that. And that's been the biggest learning experience, is like, okay, well, these are where the holes are, and this is where we can hopefully help push the boundaries, sort of push the industry forward. And that's why it's been a pleasure to work with Sunshine and Taylor, because I think we share that same desire to look for, you know, to take what we know and to go, okay, well, these are the issues, and I learned so much from them. So it's been a real awesome learning experience.
Yeah, and it for sure is such an incredible developing area, the sustainability within fashion. But at the same time, we still have a lot of issues and a lot of things that still need to be developed and pushed for. So that's what's great about doing these collabs together. But Miguel, how do you find, when you're designing for your brand S1C, that aesthetic and sustainability goes hand in hand? And do you believe that they can do so?
I do. I think now we're in a place where we understand the purpose of sustainability, but what will get everything, or get, I believe, the movement, make it more relevant and make it more versatile, is exploring all these new technologies, new processes to achieve aesthetics that not only communicate sustainability, but sometimes maybe don't communicate sustainability. I think that's sort of the issue in at least for me, when I see and hear sustainable, there's a aesthetic quality that I sort of place on that. And there's just so many more lifestyles, so many more perspectives that you know, would find value and would absolutely spend their money if there were offerings that I think spoke to their lifestyle. And so I think that that's sort of the fun place that we are right now, is like new brands, new voices that aren't necessarily using sustainability as the selling point. They're using it as sort of the platform. And it should be, and that it's baked in automatically. And that's what S1C, that was like the very sort of impetus of starting S1C. It was I want to create a brand that doesn't use sustainability as the selling point, but just has it as a part of its DNA. And I think that's what we're going to find more and more as we push forward and new designers and voices emerge.
Yeah, natural integration of sustainability in the DNA.
Yes.
Do you feel that in the process of designing sustainably that you have sometimes had to compromise the aesthetic to please the environment, so to say?
Well, I think this is a fun challenge that Sunshine Taylor and I had, which I think is a part of the economics of design, because each element that goes into any specific offering has to be considered, and that translates into your bottom line, and that's what all of this really becomes. This is where the science of it, the science of business, fashion, what I mean, the market system and all these things really start to sort of converge. And that was sort of the fun challenge that we had, is how can we create something that spoke to the brand, the energy, without losing that sort of DNA and conveying the right message. And I do think that what we've landed on, even though we're still sort of tweaking, and what we're landing on, we're still tweaking. I have no, there's nothing I feel that is impossible. It's more about, the process, resource, and hopefully the development of the technologies, which this challenge is probably going to help, I hope, at least create conversation that pushes it forward. And that was the whole purpose of it anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the main learning from this designer challenge has been how much innovation and investment is still needed in the eyewear industry. And there is so much more focus on the apparel industry, which leaves out the eyewear and accessory aspect, which are being mass produced as well on a global scale and is a huge part of the fashion industry. The fashion industry seems to forget that sunglasses frames and lenses are mostly made of virgin plastic, and plastic is created using fossil fuels, and there are currently very few technologies at only small scale availability to recycle sunglasses. So let's jump to our experts in this field, starting with Sunshine. You've told us that your ask for transparency in the eyewear industry has hurt your business, and that you said yes to participate in this challenge because of the problems in the eyewear industry. So could you define your main challenges or problems that you experience?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's been really great to be part of this because for a long time we've been working in this industry, and with not a super strong voice. We're designers, we're just a small cog within the bigger machine. So to work with you guys and work with CFS and the Global Fashion Agenda to highlight and to start the dialogue is really, I feel like, is like the start of it all for us. So yeah, like certainly it's about a lack of dialogue that's going on, a lack of transparency within our industry. It's pretty closed, and a lack of urgency. So look, I think that the eyewear industry is dominated by very large organizations, and they're not so quick to take up these events and to work, with Miguel and CFS, etc. We are all smaller, more agile organizations who have a sense of urgency. So yeah, I'm really passionate that the industry awakens to what we're going through, to the situation that we're in, and we really take it seriously together as an industry. Yeah, and that we can affect meaningful change. We've really got to pull together, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm especially also very interested in the aspect of the small businesses having to produce in smaller quantities, but we'll dive into that later. First, I also want to hear a bit from Taylor. What do you see as the biggest challenge sustainability-wise in terms of environmental impact when producing sunglasses?
Sorry. I think you touched on it a bit earlier when you mentioned about the virgin materials. Most eyewear is made from virgin materials, whether that be metal or plastic. There has been some more developments in like biodegradable materials and bio-based materials, but we haven't really seen any development around that facilitates those materials being disposed of correctly. So our worry there is, where is that going? What's happening to that? Even though it is a better material, it still could be ending up in landfills, which is not our goal. We really think there should be more of a focus on developing recycled materials, both metal and plastic, to keep things out of the waste, reusing what we already have, and avoiding making more. So keeping everything in the loop.
Yeah, that's a great way of seeing it, and especially something that, as we see it happening in the apparel industry, there should be the technology of developing these sort of facilities.
Yeah.
So Miguel, when you entered this designer challenge, did you expect to be experiencing this number of complications? And are there any surprises that you've learned from the eyewear industry and working closely with Sunshine and Taylor?
I mean, stepping into this, I was absolutely unaware of any of the challenges or where anything lied. I assumed that there would be like a plethora of challenges, not as many as we sort of hit once we had locked in a design and like really honed in on what the offering would be. It's been a trip to just kind of piece together how many small elements, and we're talking about for sunglasses, you know, first and foremost, learning just the basic elements that we would need to hone in on, you know, in terms of decisions, you know, going with one process versus the next, what that means in terms of production and how that translates into cost. Are we going to go with, you know, injected molds, or are we going to do it, you know, all these different things, and the challenges and hurdles that we'd have to sort of overcome. It seemed so simple in the very beginning, and as we went further and further along the road, you start to understand all the nuanced, you know, sort of elements that, you know, really make this a challenge to navigate in terms of pushing the industry forward, pushing manufacturing forward in a way that is respectful, you know, of ecosystems and Earth, and not at the detriment of, you know, human beings and you know, animals and plants. So I'd like to say that I thought it was going to be easy. I didn't think it was going to be hard, but it was much more challenging, and at the same time, so much more rewarding, just in terms of what I've learned. And hopefully, again, what's come out of it is a dialogue about how do we, again, not only for accessories, but especially for accessories, how do we get manufacturers, get, you know, developers to really listen and to play with smaller brands, to work with, you know what I mean, smaller brands. And I think it's the solutions. It's first identifying the issue before you can find a solution. So that's the best part.
I think that's a great question also to ask, like, out in the open, that maybe Taylor and Sunshine can shoot some ideas on as well, because they've been in the field for so long. Mm-hmm. So how do we push this agenda forward? How do we push the manufacturers, and how do we support the smaller brands that wish to enter the market as being one of the sustainable key players? Because as we've also spoken before, I know that you're also working with both large and small clients, and there's different problems or difficulties with that. So do you have any sort of thing that you wish that we could push into the industry right now in the manufacturing section?
I've got a couple of ideas. Like, I think I would love to, I mean, in terms of talking about independent brands, smaller brands, which, you know, who are the change makers? You know, the bigger brands always follow what's going to go on with the change makers, innovators of the smaller creative independent brands. And I feel like if there was some collaboration between some of the materials suppliers, because there's great developments going on in the material with the material suppliers, but often it's prohibitive in terms of cost and very complex systems, manufacturing systems to use these materials. Like, we're just not there yet that they're like mass and they're mainstream accessible to everyone. So if like some of these material suppliers could see a way to collaborate and would see that, you know, these change making, more independent brands could really showcase what they're doing, lower their MOQs somehow, I don't know, help them with their certification costs and processes, then, you know, perhaps it's a way that we can sort of open it up. And, you know, it's all about critical mass. Once the bigger brands get on board, then it will be more, you know, the costs will come down and it will be more accessible to everyone. But it's tough at the moment because we're at that stage where the materials are coming, but it's like to get them over the line that we can actually use them, we're kind of stuck. I mean, it will happen. I really believe it will happen. It's just like we need the urgency for it to happen now. Also, there's another idea that I've had for a long time, and I'd love to like reach out to anyone in the manufacturing, like eyewear manufacturing sector, is like manufacturing hubs or manufacturing, like individual manufacturers who become like a bit of a one-stop shop for making sustainable eyewear. Because there's a lot of brands out there who really want to do it, but it's like, again, it's there. If they're one small brand in a big chain, that they'll get lost, or the materials or the processes aren't sort of tried and tested yet. So I think there's a really great business opportunity there in manufacturing.
For sure, especially like this collaboration point of view as well, because that currently we see that it's the big players that have to ask the demand in order for the manufacturers to actually apply these certain demands. And by turning it around and making it a collaborative effort from smaller brands, they might become a big power. Taylor, do you have anything that you wish to add to Sunshine's point of view as well?
I think a big factor is also awareness. There's not a lot of awareness of what effect the eyewear industry has on the environment, nowhere near the same level that the textiles industry does. So I think if there was a bit more awareness, there would be a bit more drive from people demanding change and demanding newer products, newer materials, and newer processes to make eyewear. Because at the moment, it's sort of a forgotten part of the fashion industry, and there's not much demand. There's people asking for it, but the solutions we get on a mass level are not that great, and we want more. We want to be 100% happy with what we're putting out there, and at the moment, without the awareness, there's just not the development that we're looking for.
Yeah. So Miguel, turning to you as being one of the smaller brands, if there was this sort of collaborative community, and you already being a respected public figure and coming with your own brand, would this be something that you would be interested in participating in as well, in order to push this action?
I think that's sort of that's always been the, just in terms of understanding how change comes in a market system, it's just always about demand. And unfortunately, in this is no exception. So when the larger population of consumers demand a certain standard, then the industry changes. And in the same way, larger corporations are paying attention to smaller, forward-thinking companies in whatever sector, not just fashion and so on and so forth. Across the board, it's larger companies that are paying attention to smaller movements, smaller products, smaller demand, and trying to forecast in a way that benefits them at the right time. So it's really again, it is about educating, and it is about numbers and how many. So to answer your question, I say all that to say, I'm I'm so down to, you know, combine, to, you know, create coalition, to create community that sort of pushes the, you know, pushes that demand, and also allows us to meet the requirements of larger manufacturers in order for them to work with, you know, smaller brands, and smaller companies. I think that's just how it works. So I'm absolutely down for that. I think that's what the industry needs in general. And the sooner we can do that, the faster we get to next levels and better practices.
Yeah. So Sunshine, when you are taking in or being approached by designers, what is like the most common questions that you're getting asked, and what kind of mindset do you believe that a designer should, what's it called, have to start producing sustainably?
I mean, definitely it's what materials come, what's available right now to use, and then it will quickly come with how fast can we have it. So I would say, like, we need patience, you know, from the brand partners, the designers, because there are some great things happening, but it's because it's a first time often, or we're working with manufacturers and it's new, it takes longer. So yeah, I would definitely say patience and pricing structure, looking at margins. I hate talking about that type of thing being a designer, but it's such a reality of like the business that we're in. And, you know, these materials that are new are still more expensive. So it's like, who takes that hit? Yeah, I'd say those two things. And also just being open, as Miguel touched on like earlier, to different ways of looking at design. You know, like I really love, for me as a designer, I'm super happy with a tight brief. I love it. I love it when there's even like, you can't use this because of this, you know, price, or you can't use this because the material's not weighty enough, for example. So that's our challenge as designers. So I think if we're designing together the product, it's really being open to collaborating in an open flowing kind of way, not just this is the normal way we've done things, this is the way that sunglasses look, this is the way they feel. You know, how do we create desirability together a little bit out of the box?
For sure. So I can see that we're actually reaching the point where this is ending our talk wise, but I think this is such an interesting dialogue that I wish could keep going and people to chime into. But let me just ask a few questions around before we end. Miguel, I was wondering, what can we expect now from the upcoming S1C collection in terms of the sustainability angle?
Well, this has been sort of the question that I've been digesting in my mind is, okay, launching, even if it's a soft launch, you know, what is the story you want to tell? And for me, it was always that we wanted to create all the systems ahead of time, laying the proper foundation to grow into. So, you know, a fully, like a closed loop system of offerings was something that was important to me. And the beginnings of that are finally starting to develop. So on the side, I started working on developing blanks and a closed loop system to sort of provide blanks for smaller businesses like mine that were fully sustainably produced, and had a closed loop system in terms of, you know, being recycled and reused, so that whatever we put out there, because we can't control consumer demand, that's a part of human psychology. How do we start to make sustainability accessible for more small businesses? And that's been sort of one of the, I think of it in terms of like, you know, Elon Musk and Tesla's, you know, he wanted to create a accessible, you know, consumer car that was fully electric. And though it took a little bit more time, I do believe that more companies who are thinking in terms of these larger, you know, ways to help, you know, the everyday consumer, we're going to need more of those. So that's that's one of the more exciting things that we're developing now that's coming to fruition.
Amazing. I unfortunately we're gonna wrap this slowly up. But in to summarize this whole conversation, I think that this is definitely a huge call to action in terms of the sunglasses industry, and how we can make the quantity orders smaller or use collaboration in order to meet these demands and price points that you're facing in the eyewear industry. And I love having people on board like you and you, Sunshine, and Taylor, who are pushing this industry and being the front runners. And it's also great to see people like you, Miguel, who wish to take up these challenges and push together with a brand like Sunshine. So thank you all so much for this talk. I'm excited to see where this project goes and follow up in the future, hopefully. So thank you so much for taking your time and being here today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to all our speakers so far. I think we can already say that some incredibly interesting discussions have been brought to the table. If you haven't visited our Innovation Forum, remember that you at any time during the event today and tomorrow can explore the solution providers and book meetings with them. We highly encourage you to do so. A break is coming up before we move on to the fifth and final part of today's program. So remember to tune in back on the main stage at 7:30 p.m. Central European Time, where we have more interesting content lined up for you. And you can always check the schedule in the info area, which is automatically adjusted to the time in your location. We look forward to showing you the last panels and keynote of the day, and then we have a special closing remark to wrap up the first day of this year's Copenhagen Fashion Summit. See you then.